Welcome back to another explainer. You know, as someone who absolutely loves digging deep into ancient texts, the stuff we're unpacking today it's truly fascinating. We're looking at the profound linguistic structures found within the Quran, specifically the rhetoric of divine oaths. And to be clear, we aren't just talking about simple everyday promises here. We're looking at a highly sophisticated, structurally brilliant use of language that was quite literally designed to awaken the human mind. Let's dive in.
Right off the bat, we are confronted with this massive philosophical puzzle. I mean, think about this for a second. If a sacred text is speaking directly to believers, well, they already believe it, right? So an oath is completely unnecessary. But then, if it's speaking to disbelievers, they already reject the text entirely, so an oath isn't exactly going to suddenly convince them either. So, if believers already believe, why does God swear an oath at all? Let that weight sink in for a moment. To actually understand this paradox, we have to look really closely at the mechanics of the language itself.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. The mystery of divine oaths. 2. The language of the Arabs. 3. Swearing by the creation. And finally, 4. The rhetorical harmony.
Okay, jumping right into Section 1, the mystery of divine oaths. Why even use a qasam?
So why use an oath in the first place? Well, the Arabic word for an oath is qasam, and according to classical scholars like Suyuti, a qasam isn't just some casual throwaway addition to a sentence. In Arabic rhetoric, an oath is basically the ultimate tool. It's used to heavily emphasize a point, establish absolute unquestionable certainty, and most importantly, awaken deep reflection. In ancient Arab culture, if someone wanted to completely obliterate any shadow of a doubt about what they were saying, they swore a qasam. It's essentially a linguistic anchor. It's like it grabs you by the collar and says, hey, listen closely, this is undeniable truth.
And this actually brilliantly illustrates the legal and argumentative power of the text. The great scholar Al-Qushayri has this really fascinating insight here. He points out that in law and formal argumentation, definitive judgments are established through two things: testimony, which is known as shahada, and an oath, known as a qasam. To make sure the proof is absolutely ironclad, the Quran utilizes both. It gives the testimony, and it gives the oaths. And the result? It completely locks down the proof and leaves literally no room for an opponent to argue that the case wasn't fully made. It's the whole shebang.
Moving on to Section 2, the language of the Arabs, rhetoric and reaction.
To truly grasp how powerful this is, we've got to understand the specific rhetorical environment of the time. The Quran was revealed directly into a society that was completely, almost obsessively fixated on language and poetry. They physically felt the weight of words. Actually, there's this amazing historical anecdote reported by Suyuti about a Bedouin Arab. This guy heard a verse from Surah Al-Dariyat where God swears by the heavens and the earth. And just upon hearing that specific linguistic structure, the Bedouin actually cried out, "Who angered the majestic one so much that he had to swear an oath?" He just instinctively understood that the statement itself was already true, so the fact that an oath was added on top of it showed an extraordinary, overwhelming level of emphasis. I love that story because it really humanizes the theory, you know? It shows us the visceral, real-world impact of a qasam.
So the really crucial point is how this actually functions on a grammatical level. You see, Arabic has what we call explicit oaths. That's when you use specific particles like waw, wa, ba, or ta, like saying by the sun or wallahi. Those are explicit. They are right there on the surface. But Arabic rhetoric also employs hidden oaths. These are so brilliantly implied through emphatic sentence structures, like, for example, just adding a specific letter, the lam, to a verb. So the speaker doesn't actually come out and say, I swear, but the grammatical structure itself carries the full heavy weight and legal force of a divine oath. It is advanced, it's incredibly elegant, and it's deeply baked right into the language.
All right, that brings us to Section 3, swearing by the creation and how it magnifies the Creator. Now this brings up a super fascinating theological question. If humans are strictly forbidden from swearing by anything other than God, why does God swear by created things, like the sun or the night or a fig? Scholars looked really closely at this and they came up with a few answers. Some suggested there was a hidden meaning, proposing that saying by the fig actually implies by the Lord of the fig. Others pointed out that it simply matched the existing Arab rhetorical style of the time, since Arabs naturally swore by the night or the stars anyway. But the absolute strongest view, the one that for me really unlocks the entire text, is the third one, the idea that the creation inherently points to the Creator. Just listen to this profound quote from the scholar Ibn Abi al-Isbah. He states clearly, mentioning the created thing implies the Creator,
because no created thing exists without a creator. Really think about that for a second. When the text swears by the sun or the dawn, it isn't elevating that physical object at all. It's indirectly magnifying the supreme power, the wisdom, and the majesty of the one who engineered it. Nature itself is being presented as undeniable divine evidence. And check this out, Al-Qushayri makes another brilliant observation here. He notes that God doesn't just choose random creations for these oaths, not at all. He chooses them based on two very distinct categories. First, swearing by virtue. These are inherently sacred places, like Mount Sinai or the secure city of Makkah. And second, swearing by benefit. These are things of massive utility and life-giving properties to humanity, like the fig and the olive. Every single object sworn upon is a deliberate, highly calculated invitation for the listener to reflect on its specific value. But wait, there is one mind-blowing exception to this rule of swearing by natural phenomena or places. In Surah Al-Hijr, we actually find an oath made by a human life. By your life, they wandered blindly. The great scholar Ibn Abbas points out that this is entirely unique. God never swore by the life of any other human being except the Prophet Muhammad. It demonstrates an absolutely unparalleled rank, honor, and significance placed upon his life within the text.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what God is actually swearing about. Like, what is the subject matter? Notice the foundational pillars here. The renowned scholar Ibn al-Qayyim actually mapped all Quranic oaths to these 5 massive themes: the oneness of God, the truth of the Quran, the truthfulness of the Prophet, the reality of resurrection and judgment, and the reality of the human condition, like mankind being in a state of loss or ungratefulness. So every single oath serves to anchor one of these 5 foundational pillars of faith. It's incredibly systematic.
Okay, moving to our final section, and honestly, the climax of this explainer. Section 4, the rhetorical harmony, or the art of the Jawab al-Qasam.
So this is the part where the artistic and emotional alignment of the text will truly blow you away. To appreciate this, we really need to define this term, the Jawab al-Qasam. Basically, this translates to the conclusion or the answer to the oath. You can think of it as the core message, the payload that the oath is trying to deliver. Now here's the genius part. Sometimes in Arabic rhetoric, this conclusion is masterfully omitted. And you might wonder, why leave out the main point? Because the oath itself, the actual object being sworn by, makes the conclusion so blindingly obvious. Omitting the answer actually forces your brain to engage, to fill in the blank, making the rhetoric far, far more powerful.
But when the Jawab al-Qasam is explicitly stated, the visual and emotional alignment is just breathtaking. Ibn al-Qayyim points us to Surah Ad-Duha as a prime example. On one hand, the oath swears, by the morning brightness and by the night when it grows still. That gives us the vivid visual of light returning after a period of total darkness. On the other hand, the actual message being delivered is that God has not abandoned the prophet, which perfectly represents the return of divine revelation after it had experienced a temporary pause.
I absolutely love this part. The emotional structure matches perfectly. It's like a giant puzzle fitting together. Just as the physical dawn breaks through the absolute stillness of the night, the spiritual light of revelation breaks through the agonizing silence of that temporary pause. The physical objects sworn upon, the dawn and the night, are an exact, literal mirror of the emotional and spiritual message being delivered. This right here brilliantly illustrates the miraculous rhetorical harmony of the text, where the structure is the meaning and the meaning is the structure. It's just phenomenal.
So, let's wrap this up. What is the real takeaway from all of this? First, these oaths, these aqsaam, they aren't just random literary decorations thrown in to sound poetic. They are highly calculated rhetorical tools designed to demand your attention and completely remove any trace of doubt. Second, when the text swears by the sun, the stars, or the fig, it is elevating nature as profound, undeniable divine evidence pointing directly to the Creator. And third, every single oath possesses a deep, deliberate, rhetorical, and emotional harmony. It perfectly matches the physical object sworn upon with the spiritual truth being delivered.
Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. These texts were ultimately designed to awaken the human mind and transform how you perceive reality. So, the next time you step outside and look at the natural world, when you see the morning brightness break or feel the complete stillness of the night, will you just see nature? Or will you see an invitation? A divine oath hidden in plain sight, challenging you to reflect on the immense order, the light, and the power of its creator.